It's Wednesday in South Carolina and Simpsonville, and we're waiting for the snow. It's kind of like when we were in Hurricane Pass in Florida. You're not exactly sure where it's going to hit and how bad it's going to be, but it's difficult to know when to call off services and when not to call off services, because right now they're forecasting that we'll get 4 inches of snow or thereabouts and a chance of some ice tonight. So I know it's difficult for the pastor to make a decision about whether to call off church or not. A number of years ago, I preached a series of messages on strange events from the Old Testament. And I started out with the first message being about creation, because it's one of the strangest events you'll find. You see, it will always be, for generations to come, unless the Lord comes, debate over creation versus evolution. And I've got to tell you that I believe in creation wholeheartedly, exactly as the Bible reads. And I think that there's adequate evidence to prove to us that it takes more faith to believe science than it does to believe God's account for creation. There's a number of really difficult problems for scientists if they'll get honest. Because you see, it starts out in the beginning. Well, if there really is an eternal system, there is no beginning. And so right off the bat, what we read in the Bible is, in the beginning of the creation of this heaven and earth, and we human beings, but not the beginning of God. And it says God created. It doesn't say that he evolved things into place, but he created things. As a matter of fact, it specifically says he created the animals, that he reached down and got a handful of dust and made man. It doesn't say that he took and started the process of evolution. The next thing that you need to understand is that science contradicts itself in many ways in their own understanding of evolution. They contradict their own principles. There are at least 3 principles that I want to cover with you today on how they contradict themselves. The first one is from physics. In physics, they believe that matter can't be created or destroyed. And in life, they believe in what they call a mutual dependence. And if we take just those 2 things, and we look at those 2 things, we see how science contradicts itself. If matter can't be created or destroyed, and it takes matter in order to create energy, where did it all start? You say, well, the Big Bang Theory. No. The Big Bang Theory takes swirling gas masses, which is matter. It takes a bolt of lightning, which is energy that has to come from matter. It fuses them together into the first solid materials, but it does not explain where the swirling gas masses or the matter that created the bolt of lightning came from. Therefore, it contradicts itself. If matter can't be created or destroyed, then, in fact, how did it begin? Because it has to start with matter in some form. A Greek philosopher in 490 BC said, nothing comes from nothing. And so we have, great question even within the scientific world. The next thing that comes into mind is the mutual dependence. We know that it takes plant life to create oxygen for all living beings, and that they have to take in carbon dioxide. Again, where did the carbon dioxide come from? Where did the plants come from to start this whole mutual dependence? Well, interestingly enough, long before we knew the principles of mutual dependence, we see that this creation account starts with the formation of light. And from the light came the plants, from the plants came the animals, and I don't mean evolutionary, I mean in his creation sequence, the light came first, then the plants, and then the animals. We know that that is very much in line with mutual dependence, but if we look at the evolutionary theories, the mutual dependence didn't come in that sequence, nor can they explain how the energy, the light of the sun came about because matter can't be created or destroyed. Well, it's an interesting thing because we know that photosynthesis is a very critical part of our whole existence, and yet that can't be explained by science either. How the CO2 is formed, how the oxygen is formed, how this all came into being, where the light came from, how the sun happened to be in its orbit and provide those things. So we come up to another very, very interesting thing, and that is man. Man is different than other animals in the fact that he has the ability to think and reason, and the fact that he is, as the Bible describes, made up of earth. And if you were to break down man, you would find that he's made up of oxygen, water, calcium, carbon, little pinches of chlorine, phosphorus, fat, and sulfur, just to name a few of the pinches. But he's made up of everything that's commonly found in dirt. And that says that God, before we knew the scientific principles of how man is made up, already had done exactly what we know would have to be done, and that is that the properties that are commonly found in earth were used to make up man. But then you come into the complex problem about where did women come from? Well, God says he took them out of man, but he made them uniquely different than man for the propagation of the species. And we find that's exactly what they are. They're different. They're physically different. And we find the incredible complexity of man. In a piece of skin the size of a postage stamp, there are 3 million cells. Now that's a piece of skin the size of a postage stamp. 3 million cells. There are yards of blood vessels, yards of nerves, hundreds of sweat glands, and many oil glands, as well as nerve endings, all in a little piece of skin the size of a postage stamp. Did we just evolve into the complex beings that we are by evolutionary process, or did God literally create man? Well, even if you don't believe that man was created, that he evolved from a protozoa, then you have the problem of his actual being, his personality, and his soul. What makes man so unique and so different, and to have every man different than the next man in the way they are, think, and react? Well, it's very, very clear, because God says in his word that after he created man, he blew life into him. He blew a soul, a living being, into him. Strange events of the Old Testament. There couldn't be one more strange than that. But I got to tell you, the creation account gives far more information and scientific proof that God created as he said he did than any scientific theory you'll ever study. Think about it. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.